Today's show is brought to you by 3C. Comprehensive Cannabis Consulting helps clients design, build, and optimize their cannabis business from initial assessment and planning through operationalization and ongoing management. To learn more about how their services are tailored to meet the unique goals and objectives of each of their clients, go to 3ccannabis.com. And for a limited time, 3C is giving all MJBulls listeners an additional 10% off their fees just for mentioning that you heard it on the show. Go to 3ccannabis.com.
For example, one of our modules is the cultivation yield module, where we plug into the metric API key, pull out all of that information around plants and batches and harvests and all of that into one location, and then present very simple, specific, clear insights around what strains are growing the most, how long does it take to grow them, and ultimately, where is your best profit margin?
From Bumminett Media, it's the MJBulls Podcast, a show about raising cannabis capital. I'm Dan Humiston, and on today's show, how this company is efficiently consolidating all the data from all the non-compatible programs to give cannabis companies the information they need to make data-driven decisions. Today in the Raising Cannabis Capital series, we are joined by Henry Finkelstein, CEO and founder of Cannabis Big Data. Henry, welcome to the MJBulls Podcast.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, Henry, one of the great things about running a business today is that all the information about the business is digitally entered. All the information that business owners need is available to them. But unfortunately, even though we have all this information stored someplace, it usually resides in a lot of different programs or different locations. So at the end of the day, the business owner ends up having to do a lot of manual extraction from different locations and then, re-entering it in an Excel spreadsheet in order to get the answer that they're looking for. And that's where Cannabis Big Data comes in. Tell us how you solve this problem for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And I think you have a great point, Dan. There is so much valuable information that's sitting in the seed to sale, the point of sale, the accounting, the hardware sensors, or even internal spreadsheets. There's so much valuable information, but it can be hard to connect those data dots. It can be hard to pull all of that into a central location and make dollars and cents of it. And that's really what Cannabis Big Data does. We plug into any data source, truly any data source, any software, any hardware, any internal or external data that we have legal rights to pull into your warehouse. We organize that information, and then we present simple, intuitive, actionable insights out of that information. Look, Dan, if data isn't actionable, it's worse than useless. It's distracting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the nice thing about what you're doing is that because you're working with a lot of different people within certain sectors, you get some information about maybe the way that this company uses data to make decisions. And you can suggest that to other companies, say, well, this is a similar way that a lot of industry people are finding or making decisions using this information. Maybe it's a way that they hadn't thought of before. So you're not only finding the data for them, but you're also showing them a way to manage their business that they may not have already thought of.
That's exactly right. And that's the value of having cannabis-specific data toolkit at your fingertips. And I'll give you two very perfect examples of exactly what you're talking about. One example is Metric. Everyone has to use Metric in Colorado, and I think 11 other states now. It might be up to 12. And Metric is a big player in the market, obviously. By law, everyone has to use it in the states where it's required. And yet, Metric didn't really build in the best reporting architecture. So one of the challenges that everyone faces in this industry is that they have to put data into Metric. By law, they have to do that, but it doesn't do much for them. And so, especially as we think about cultivations or manufacturers, there's so much insight they can get from their plants, their strains, their harvests, their packages, their production batches, and so on. But you have to export it to a spreadsheet and then manipulate it. And then every time you do that, you have to redo it and redo it again. And so that's, for example, one of our modules is the cultivation yield module, where we plug into the metric API key, pull out all of that information around plants and batches and harvests and all of that into one location, and then present very simple, specific, clear insights around what strains are growing the most, how long does it take to grow them, and ultimately, where is your best profit margin? so that as you're planning out your next production cycle, you can use our Grow Profit Planner to predictively model what you're going to achieve from a net sales gross profit perspective before you ever put a seed or cutting in the ground. And that's just one example of taking the data that you already have, because you have to enter it by law, you have to use it, and actually making it valuable and actionable for the team to drive business decisions.
Oh, and sure. And say you got that information. Now I plug it into my projections, and then I start comparing that to my projections as we're going along, seamlessly extracting. It's automatically done for me. I can see how we're doing with according to projections. Maybe we have to make an adjustment. So then we make that adjustment. Let's tie in payroll.
That's exactly right.
All these different programs that are necessary for me to run my business are not all talking to each other, but the way you consolidate this, they do. I want to take a minute to tell everyone about an exciting free opportunity that one of our former guests, Good Harvest Company, is offering retail operators and cannabis brand managers in the adult use market. Good Harvest Company is preparing to launch their platform, which uses customers' buying and shopping behaviors to help brands effectively reach their customers. And for a limited time, Good Harvest Company will offer participating companies free access to their data in return for their feedback. To learn more, go to goodharvest.co. I'm going to jump you ahead here for a second. I know you have a new product in the works. Let's talk about this product.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're in the middle of a fundraising round right now. And one of the things that we have observed in being in past fundraising rounds and having so many peers, both on the capital side and the entrepreneur side, raising money takes a lot of time and energy, and oftentimes a lot of money. And that's all time, money, and energy that is not going towards servicing customers. And so, on a very basic level, we put together a data-driven toolkit for investors and for entrepreneurs to make these markets more efficient. And we call it our data-driven deal analyzer. And here's how it works. You can think of it like a Match.com for cannabis investors and cannabis entrepreneurs. On the one hand, investors fill out their investor thesis, their profile around what types of deals are they looking for, what verticals are they getting into, what's their typical deal size, how do they do due diligence, and a variety of other questions around their preference for what types of businesses they're interested in looking at. And then on the other side, entrepreneurs fill out essentially the exact same form, but self-reporting about themselves. What's their deal size? What is their answer for, how strong are their founders and other things like that. And then we put together this deal analyzer that algorithmically matches investors to entrepreneurs. So we can say not just, is this deal compatible to your investor thesis, but also what is the match score for that potential deal? And of course, nothing is going to replace the human interaction. Again, I always say that, we're data folk, but we are humans first and foremost. And so you can't ever replace the human interaction, but you can make it much more efficient and save time, money, and energy by having a data-driven methodology to validate the investor thesis and all the deals coming through your deal flow.
We have a Cannabis Capital directory on our website, which just listing everybody that's raising money and everybody that's investing. And that site gets hit a lot. You said you were in the middle of a raise. Do you want to take a minute to talk about what you're raising?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we're raising our Series A bridge right now. It's just over $500,000, and it's focused on individuals, accredited investors, or interested in joining an SPV. We're really using that fund to expand our footprint. We spent the last 2 years validating product market fit and developing a scalable, data-driven growth engine. And we come from the lean methodology. From day zero, I got out of the building and I was interviewing prospective customers. I was doing day-in-the-life interviews. Before we ever wrote a single line of code, we had 2 alpha customers signed up paying us real dollars to validate that this is a real problem with real solutions that are going to get real money. And it took us time. It took us 2 whole years to validate that we have a product market fit and that we have a way to get that product into the marketplace in a scalable, efficient format. And now we're there. And it's so exciting, Dan.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how excited I am seeing all of the changes at the federal level and in other countries, because this is only accelerating. And as this industry accelerates and as the operators become more sophisticated, both the individuals that grew up in the industry and those that are coming in from other industries. Data is going to be at the heart of everything. Truly, everything is going to be a data-driven decision. We have the toolkit. We have the software already developed. And so 70% of our use of funds is going towards customer acquisition and marketing, getting our name out in the marketplace so that people know about this really wonderful data toolkit that we've developed for the cannabis industry.
Well, Henry, this has been really interesting, and I hope that we have an opportunity to follow up later on as this thing continues to roll down the road. Yeah, I just see there's so much opportunity in what you're doing, and I can't wait to see how this thing plays out as the industry keeps getting bigger. So thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy the MJBulls podcast, so it's truly an honor to be here.
Well, that's nice of you to say. Thanks again. Let me take a second to thank Trevitt Hill for sponsoring today's show. Cannabis investors expect big returns from the companies that they invest in. Unfortunately, not all cannabis investments succeed. Trevitt Hill's management team works with investors to help turn around, or in some cases purchase, their underperforming portfolio companies. To learn more, go to trevitthill.com. Thanks for listening to the MJBulls podcast. To learn more about today's guest or to become a guest, visit our website at MJBulls.com. Today's show was produced by Bumminit Media, with original music composed by Jamie Humiston. I'm Dan Humiston, and you've been listening to the MJBulls podcast.